Hey, what's up? This is incredibly angry Father Moo here going on a rant today. So, recently on YouTube, on YouTube I see a lot of videos I don't like, but one video I really don't like is these videos with names like 7 things you need to know before you go dollless, or 5 things you must know before buying your first synth. All these kind of videos. If anybody is out there actually following their advice, I'm here to tell you,
don't.
I mean, you can watch whatever videos you want, but it's so much better to take your own musical journey to where you want to be. And if you start off by listening to what some random guy on the internet says, that's not going to get you closer to your own sound. It's going to get you closer to his sound. So I'm certainly not here to tell you which synth or other hardware gear to buy. I'm just going to give you some extremely general advice, which, not that you asked for it, but which I hope will encourage you to discover your own path. Certainly not my path. Number 1 tip, here we go. Try making electronic music without buying anything. So I don't know who you are or what gear you have. If you're watching a YouTube video, you may already have a computer or a phone. Even if you are thinking about buying hardware gear to go dollless, there's so much you can explore for free on any computing device that's available in the modern world. And I would highly advise you to go check those out before you buy anything. At least try making some sounds. Try making a drum beat without paying a penny for it, or try making a synth sound without paying a penny for it. You may not love the drum beat or the first synth sound that you make, but if you are going to go out and spend money on hardware that does those same things, why don't you see if you actually have something in your house that can already do that? It would be kind of obvious to say if you already have a synth or a keyboard in your house that you could try that, but I'm thinking more of things like computers and iPhones, basically, or any kind of smartphone. There were so many options. Back in the day, there was people who got started making beats on software for the PlayStation 1. I think Dizzy Rascal made his first single on the PlayStation 1's tracker software. So why is this a useful exercise? Number 1, it'll take a bit of effort to go out there and figure out which free software there's available to you, and to get it onto your device, and to actually make a bleep or a bloop sound, or as I say, a drum loop, or maybe record a sample from any record and just loop it, even if it's not a perfect loop. Just see if you can do that, because that'll take you a long way towards realizing what kind of gear you actually want to end up buying. It may teach you a lot about the differences between sampling and synthesis, and why those two things are what they are, and why people choose to do one or do the other. But at the least, I'm certain that it will teach you a hell of a lot. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, if you're going to buy something, choose something you think sounds good. Wow, that sounds like an obvious tip, but I really mean it. For one thing, you can usually do this by listening to any synthesizer online for free. You can search Yamaha Reface CP preset sounds, and you will hear some guy very boringly playing the sounds that will come out of that synthesizer's presets. That's a good general way, as long as the video is relatively good quality, to hear what different things sound like. And rather than me or some other YouTuber telling you like this is the best choice or this one is analog so therefore it's good, you can just choose what actually sounds good to you. You don't have to worry about what other people think sounds good. You are obviously going to have to consider your budget as well, but I think given the state of the modern world, whether you want an analog or a digital starter synth, There's many options all the way down to the lowest end of the budget scale. And if you can find one of those that sounds good to you, trust your gut is what I'm trying to say. Trust your ears. I mean, your whole music career as an electronic musician is going to require you to trust your ears. So if you can't do that for your first synth purchase or sampler purchase, that's going to be a problem. Tip number 3 in the incredibly general tips department. Make sure it physically fits your body. Make sure your first synth purchase or musical instrument purchase is suitable for your body's dimensions. What do I mean by that? Well, if it has a keyboard, there are mini keys and there are full-size keys. And depending on who you are and the size of your hands and fingers and the relationships between them, you may find it easier to play on a mini keyboard or harder, or the same thing for full-size keys. Different keyboards have different what we call action, like some of them you only need a light touch to press down, others you need a firm, solid push to get the key all the way down like a real piano. You don't need to know what those names are. You simply need to experience it yourself. So for tip number 2, as I said, you could usually listen to most modern synths online for free. For tip number 3, you're going to have to put in a little bit more effort. If you have a friend who has a keyboard, you can try it out. But as I said, remember, just because it has a mini key setup and you're going to go buy something with mini keys, they may have a very different feel. In fact, even the dimensions of the keys may be very different. If you don't have a friend who can lend you something, the next best option is go to a shop where you can try something out for yourself. There's also going to be alternatives to the keyboard. You could use things like the pads on an MPC to play back samples and drum hits for what they call finger drumming, if that's what you're going to go into. And there are also new and interesting strange interfaces like the Hack-In Continuum, or I'm forgetting some of the names right now, but they're keyboards that have things like aftertouch and allow you to press down on them and experience manipulating the sound in a novel way that most keyboards can't. For me, I started on some hardware synths that had ribbon controllers like the Korg Monotribe and Monotron. Those, again, may not be for everybody. If you're supposed to play those with your fingertip, but I ended up using a stylus because my fingers were too big. But the point is the same. It also applies to not only to the keyboard, but to the knobs. A lot of people will look at or will purchase a synth and realize that the little tiny knobs are physically too small for them to twist with their fingers, especially when there's a bunch of small knobs crammed together on a limited front part of the synth. There's certainly been some that have been criticized for this. The Roland Boutique series is famous for it, but that only really applies to people who have large enough fingers that it doesn't work for them. So my point is, tip number 3, whatever you purchase, make sure it physically fits your body in terms of how your fingers will play the keys and how your fingers will interact with other elements of it, such as knobs, possibly joysticks, or even pitch bend knobs or modulation sliders and wheels on the left side of the keyboard. Number 4 is a very quick and easy tip. Whatever you buy, just keep the box and everything it comes with so you can send it back or sell it later. You might be surprised to know that a $10,000 synth will hold its value better than a $60,000 car. And there are exceptions. If you bought like a Rhythm Wolf, it might have lost a lot of value, but then Audio Pills will make a video about how bad it is and suddenly people want to buy it again, so it might go up again. But yeah, some synths actually turn out to be investments, like the Teenage Engineering OP series. But yeah, it's a simple tip. Whatever you buy, keep the box and everything it comes with, so you can either send it back within the warranty period if it doesn't suit your body or the sound doesn't work out for you, or sell it to someone else later. And tip number 5, this is the last official tip. It may be the most important. It's actually related to number 1. When you get something that makes sound, start recording yourself. It could be as simple as like a cassette player that you put a blank tape in and you push record and you play your synth through your amp or speakers and just record it that way. If you have a computer, you can use a DAW as well. Even though I said we're talking about going DAW-less, recording yourself is still an important function of that. If you want to go out and buy a hardware digital recorder, you can. But I have the feeling, again, going back to number 1, that most people already own a device that can record sounds of some kind. If you have a smartphone, you could record yourself the same way I'm recording my voice for this video. It may be a low quality recording with a bit of fuzz or hiss in the background, but the real advantage will be, besides like being able to hear what you did and listen to the sounds that you made, I think 10 years later you'll be interested to hear what you yourself were doing, even if you cringe at it a little bit. And also by moving from single tracking to multi-tracking, you will be able to take full advantage of your device. For example, if you have a sampler, you could lay down a drum beat on the first track and then go back and play more melodic samples over it. And even if you make mistakes in the first overdub, you still have your correct original take of the drum part, and you can redo it until you get it right. Another reason would be if you're experimenting with a hardware synth or with even a limited modular synth, you'll probably end up making some really weird and wacky sounds, and you may have difficulty recreating those sounds later, no matter how accurately you think you've memorized the patch, or even if you take a photo of all your settings. Sometimes there might be something that you went menu diving and flipped an option, and that's what made the sound have a certain weird character. Well, the good thing is, even if you forget how to make it, if you've recorded it, you have an example of it. You can aim to remake that sound later. Or you can load that weird sound that you like into a sampler and use it to make a beat. Again, if you're recording yourself and you make your own sounds to sample, not only are they copyright free, but you're using a lot of your own creativity rather than borrowing someone else's kick drum. I was reading an article today that when Juan Atkins, one of the godfathers of techno, the first synth he ever got was Korg MS-10, a very, very limited single oscillator synth. But what he did was he used it to make drum sounds. Now, if you only had that one synth and you make a kick drum sound or a snare drum sound, you can't really do anything with that sound except record it. But once you've learned how to make all those different sounds, when you move on to a larger, more elaborate setup, that knowledge goes with you, and the ability to craft your own drum sounds from a single monophonic synth setup gives you a very deep understanding of what kind of sound design is right for you and is the right way for you to express yourself. So it's an incredibly good learning tool, even if that first device doesn't allow you to put those drum sounds together in a way that allows you to make a complete track or even anything beyond a pew kind of sound. As I said, just learning how to make them from scratch is so valuable, you have no idea. So yeah, I have, those are my main 5 tips, and again, the good thing about my incredibly vague advice is you can absolutely ignore any of these 5 points, but I think if you follow them in your own way and use a bit of your own creativity rather than what some person on the internet tells you to buy, you'll be more satisfied when 2 or 3 years later you're making your own sounds. Even if you did buy something, a synth that you end up selling and getting, losing 10% of the value of it, it's probably not that big of a loss in the long term. So yeah, my final 2 tips here. Number 6, if you get one thing and then later you get another thing, and one of those things has an audio input, try running one through the other. So if you get any synth, and you also get an MS-20, for example, like the mini version, which is for sale now, the MS-20 has an audio input where the filter can process external sounds. So if you had your device A and you ran it through device B, which is the MS-20 mini, you will instantly get a lot of interesting sounds that obviously no one hardware device could produce, because you're using two hardware devices together to produce them. And my other super general tip is, if your first thing is digital, your second thing can be analog, and vice versa. In other words, mix it up in terms of your sound generation sources. If you have a real analog synth, like let's say let's go back to the MS-20 mini, and you're trying to figure out what to buy for your second device, buy an old DX7, because those two synths will sound incredibly different from each other due to their incredibly different sound producing technologies. What will be the third thing you buy after that? Maybe an old wave station. It's digital like the DX7, but it produces sound again in a different way. The DX7 uses FM, the wave station uses wavetable technology. But again, I promise not to recommend any actual synths. I'm not really telling you any of those three synths matter. I'm telling you having one analog thing and one digital thing will give you contrast, and contrast is so important. Yeah, I can't really express that enough. So yeah, those are Father Moo's incredibly angry 5 general anti-advice tips for going your own way and making electronic music. And yeah, I hope you are as angry as me. Stay angry out there. You can hit like or subscribe if you want, but I'd rather you went and posted your own rebuttal of one of these anti-opinions in the comments, because hey, I'm not really married to them. I just think I just don't like seeing people follow someone else's path so slavishly. I can understand why, if you're like, oh, Jimi Hendrix had this guitar, so I love Jimi Hendrix, so I want to buy the same guitar. I get that thinking. I probably thought like that. And hey, I do like Jimi Hendrix, and his guitars are awesome. But at the same time, finding your own combination of devices is going to allow you to explore things your own creative way. Going out there and saying, my favorite artist used X, so I need X, I just think that's a disappointing way to start your career. But like I said, all my tips here are to be taken with a massive grain of salt. So if they help you, great. If they don't, it's just another annoying YouTube video. That's life, baby. Father Moo out.